Ethan had woken up with a smile that morning, his heart buzzing with the kind of excitement only a child can feel. It was his 8th birthday, and this year was supposed to be special. His mother had told him over breakfast, with her warm smile that always seemed a little too sad, that his father would be coming home today. Ethan could barely contain his excitement at the thought. His father worked far away, a long-haul trucker who was often gone for weeks at a time. He hadn't seen him in months, but every night Ethan stared at the picture of his father on his nightstand, imagining the moment they'd be together again. He envisioned his father walking through the door, arms wide open, with a smile just for him. They would finally celebrate, just the two of them, like Ethan had dreamed. The day passed slowly, each minute stretching out longer than the one before. Ethan waited by the window, watching the street outside with wide eyes, his small hands pressed against the glass. The birthday banner his mother had hung up fluttered gently in the breeze, and the smell of chocolate cake filled the house. He loved chocolate, it was his favorite. His mother made sure to make it perfect, even though Ethan could tell she was tired. As the hours ticked by, Ethan's smile began to falter. Noon came and went, and still no sign of his father. Ethan's mother reassured him, her voice soft but strained. "He'll be here, sweetheart," she said, patting his head, though her eyes flickered with doubt. "Just wait a little longer." Ethan did. He waited and waited and waited. By evening the sun had begun to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard. Ethan sat on the porch steps, clutching a small, carefully wrapped present in his hands. His father had promised to bring him something special this year. He'd been talking about it on the phone for weeks. "You'll love it, Ethan, just wait. I'll be home soon, buddy." The phone didn't ring that day. The guests, just a couple of neighbors, and his grandmother, had already come and gone, offering well wishes before quietly leaving as the night wore on. They understood, but they didn't say it. Ethan's mother sat quietly in the kitchen, her eyes watching the clock, though she didn't say much anymore. The candles were still waiting to be lit. Ethan kept staring out at the street, his eyes searching for headlights in the distance, for the rumble of an engine he recognized. But all he saw was the empty road, quiet and still, mocking him with its silence. When night finally settled and the stars began to twinkle faintly in the sky, his mother called him back inside. The house felt too big, too quiet. The table was set with a cake, untouched, its 8 candles standing like sentinels in the frosting. His mother smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "It's time, Ethan," she whispered. "You should blow out your candles." Ethan nodded, his heart heavy, but still clinging to a thin thread of hope. Maybe his dad was just late. Maybe he'd walk through the door right now, just in time for the candles. Maybe. But the door didn't open. No one came. With a quiet sigh, Ethan leaned forward and blew out the candles in a single breath. The soft glow faded, leaving only darkness and the faint scent of melted wax. His mother clapped softly, her hands shaking. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." Ethan forced a smile, but his eyes betrayed him. He could feel the lump in his throat growing, threatening to spill into tears, but he refused to let them fall. His father had promised. He would come. He would. He had to. But as the minutes stretched into hours, Ethan's hope began to wane. The silence in the house pressed in on him, wrapping around his small frame like a heavy blanket. He could hear the ticking of the kitchen clock, each second a reminder of how long he had waited. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, Ethan grabbed his father's picture from his nightstand and crawled into bed. He clutched it to his chest, closing his eyes tightly. "Maybe next year," he whispered to the empty room, his voice barely audible in the quiet night. "Maybe next year he'll be here." The house creaked softly, as if sighing along with him. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the echoes of a birthday, long forgotten by everyone except the boy who had waited all day for someone who never came. Ethan drifted to sleep, the photograph still pressed against his heart, and in his dreams his father was there, smiling, laughing, holding him close. In his dreams, it was the perfect birthday, but in the cold, empty room, the only sound that lingered was the ticking of the clock, counting the seconds of another lonely year.